Silence is a strange thing because it doesn't hit all at once. It doesn't crash like a storm or explode like anger. It creeps. It grows. It settles into the spaces where your presence used to live. And when you truly go silent after everything you poured into her, after all the effort, the investment, the emotional energy you gave, why without hesitation, she starts to feel the one thing she thought she'd never feel. Your absence. Not the version she imagined, not the version she convinced herself of, but the real emptiness that appears when a man who genuinely cared finally removes himself. That's when truth begins to hit her in ways she never expected. Because silence exposes everything she thought she had under control. When you step back, she's no longer able to escape her own thoughts. There's no more reassurance, no more comfort, no more emotional safety net. She doesn't have your presence to lean on or your energy to depend on. Suddenly she has to sit with the decision she made, the words she said, the actions she didn't think would have consequences. In the beginning, she might act like nothing affects her. She'll distract herself, keep busy, tell herself she's fine, but silence has a way of stripping away illusions layer by layer. And the longer it continues, the deeper it cuts. Your silence becomes a mirror she never wanted to look into. In that reflection, she sees the truth she used to avoid. She sees how real the connection actually was, how much effort you gave, and how differently you treated her compared to everyone else. She begins to understand that your quiet isn't indifference. It's the sound of a man no longer willing to be taken for granted. That realization rattles her because whether she admits it or not, she felt safe knowing you'd always be there, ready to talk, ready to fix things, ready to show up in ways most men never do. She depended on that version of you far more than she allowed herself to express. And here's where silence becomes powerful. Her mind begins to replay every memory. Your patience, your consistency, your presence, the same things she overlooked start to taste different now. What she once brushed off as normal suddenly feels valuable. What she once took lightly now feels rare. She can lie to friends. She can distract herself on social media. She can even tell herself she has moved on. But she cannot escape the reality that you no longer chase. You no longer reach out. And you no longer give her what she assumed she could always return to. That's when silence begins to haunt her. Because when you stop talking to her, she can't predict you anymore. She doesn't know what you're thinking, how you're feeling, or whether you've emotionally detached. And uncertainty is something she's not built to handle for long. She starts questioning if she misjudged you, if she pushed too far, if she underestimated your ability to walk away. She begins to realize that you weren't the one stuck on her. You were the one willing to give everything until you finally chose peace over pain. Silence makes her feel the weight of losing a man who is genuine. And the deeper that realization sinks in, the more she understands that once a man turns silent from a place of strength, he rarely returns to the version of himself she once knew. Ending line, silence always reveals what words never could. When you stay silent long enough, something powerful begins to happen inside her. Her mind starts to wander into places she never expected. At first, she may tell herself that your silence doesn't matter, that she's unbothered, that she's strong enough to detach. But the truth is, silence forces reflection, it forces stillness. It forces her to face the reality she avoided when she knew she could rely on your presence. And in that quiet, her imagination becomes louder than your words ever were. She starts replaying everything, every message, every conversation, every moment where you showed up without hesitation. She remembers how steady your energy was, how easy it was for her to reach out, how comforting it felt knowing you were only one text away. She didn't notice that sense of security while it was happening because she assumed she would always have access to it. But now in your silence, that same security becomes a memory she can't escape. She didn't realize how much of her emotional balance came from your consistency. Now she feels the sudden loss of it. And in that loss, she starts to question herself. Did she push you too far? Did she take you for granted? Did she underestimate what it would feel like when the man who cared the most finally stopped reaching out? These questions begin quietly like soft whispers in the back of her mind. But the longer the silence stretches, the louder those whispers grow. She begins to analyze her role in everything, sometimes overthinking, sometimes spiraling, but always circling back to the same realization. She never expected you to truly walk away. Your silence creates tension, and she can't resolve. Unlike when you used to reach out and diffuse the discomfort, now she has to sit with it. She tries to act normal, but every little thing becomes a trigger. A song, a place, a random memory. They all carry more weight now because there's no new interaction with you to overwrite them. Instead, everything she remembers becomes amplified. It's not that she suddenly misses you out of nowhere. It's that the absence creates a mental vacuum that gets filled with truth she once ignored. She starts imagining you moving forward, focusing on your goals, rebuilding your confidence, and becoming stronger without her. That idea hits her harder than anything else. It's not just that you're silent, it's that you're silent while growing, silent while improving. Silent while becoming the man she assumed she had time to come back to. That possibility stirs something deep inside her, something she didn't express when she had the chance. Fear. Fear that she miscalculated your loyalty. Fear that she underestimated your strength. Fear that another woman will receive the version of you she never fully appreciated. The longer you remain silent, the more she begins to realize that losing access to you wasn't a temporary shift. It was the moment the entire dynamic changed. She once believed she had control, that she could return whenever she felt like it, that your emotions would always be available to her. But your silence proves something she never considered. You can remove your energy without warning, and she no longer has the power to pull you back. This is where the depth of your silence becomes overwhelming for her. Not because of the lack of communication, but because of what the silence represents: your growth, your detachment, and your decision to choose yourself over someone who wasn't choosing you. Ending line silence makes her confront the truth she never wanted to face. When a man goes silent, especially after giving his time, effort, and emotional presence, something shifts inside her. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly, gradually, and deeply. And one of the most powerful things she begins to feel is the loss of control she once had. She becomes aware, sometimes for the first time, that the dynamic between you two is no longer the same. She can't count on predictable responses. She can't rely on your emotional consistency, and she certainly can't depend on you to fill the silence for her anymore. That loss of control becomes a weight she carries privately, even if externally she pretends everything is fine. Before your silence, she felt comfortable knowing she could reach you emotionally without much effort. Whether she wanted reassurance, attention, or validation, she knew exactly how to get it, but now she no longer has that access. Instead, she's confronted with a reality she didn't expect. Your silence means you've taken your power back. And because she didn't anticipate this shift, she's left wondering what changed in you. She starts questioning the confidence she once had in her ability to influence your emotions. That uncertainty becomes one of the strongest internal pressures she experiences. You must understand something important. Emotional control isn't about manipulation. It's about having the ability to choose how you respond, how much energy you give, and when you pull back. When she notices that she no longer has influence over your mood or your attention, it forces her to rethink the entire relationship dynamic. She starts asking herself why she no longer feels in control, and that question alone triggers a deeper level of introspection. She may try to distract herself or pretend the loss doesn't bother her, but internally it does. Losing control means losing the comfort of predictability. She can no longer depend on you as her emotional safety net. And that realization doesn't only make her think about what went wrong, it makes her think about you in a way she didn't before. As a man who has options, a man who can walk away, a man who doesn't need her for his emotional stability, this shift is powerful because it reverses the role she got used to. The man who once showed initiative is now unavailable. The man who once cared deeply is now distant. The man who once responded quickly now responds with silence. Suddenly, she's the one waiting, wondering, and overthinking. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to her how much she relied on your energy without acknowledging it when she had it. And when a woman feels she's losing control of a situation, she starts to analyze her own behavior more intensely. Sometimes she replays the moments that led to the silence. Sometimes she tries to decode your last words. Sometimes she convinces herself you must be talking to someone else. And sometimes she simply wonders if she made the wrong choice when she created distance in the first place. But the biggest shift is not that she misses you. It's that she misses the feeling of certainty she had around you. She misses the assurance that you cared, the comfort of your consistency, and the privilege of knowing she could influence your emotions. Now she sees that your silence isn't just quiet. It's a boundary, a message, a mirror, and a reminder that the access she once had is no longer guaranteed. And that realization hits her harder than anything else. Ending line. Your silence forces her to recognize the value and impact of the access she once took for granted. When your silence stretches on, something important begins to happen inside her. She starts questioning the version of the story she told herself. In the beginning, she might have justified the distance by believing she was in control, that she made the right choice, that she could pull away without losing anything. But as days turn into weeks and weeks slip toward months, the silence becomes harder to ignore. It begins to challenge her assumptions. It forces her to confront thoughts she didn't want to deal with, and suddenly she's not as sure about her decisions as she once was. She starts replaying everything in her mind, not because she wants to, but because your lack of presence creates a vacuum, when her mind fills with possibilities, doubts, and what-ifs. Before, she felt certain that you'd be there no matter what. She assumed you'd always care, that you'd try to fix things, that you'd reach out first. But your silence tells a different story now. It makes her wonder why you aren't chasing, why you didn't fight to stay, why you didn't try to convince her. That confusion slowly morphs into self-reflection. She begins looking at her choices differently. What felt empowering in the moment now feels shaky. Was she too quick to pull away? Was she too harsh in how she treated you? Did she misread your intentions? Did she underestimate your strength? These questions creep in quietly at first, but once they take root, they grow deeper. And the longer you stay silent, the stronger that reflection becomes. She starts comparing the man who once gave effort to the man who now gives none. And that contrast hits her harder than she expects, because deep down she didn't imagine that you would actually detach. She didn't expect that your silence would hold. And she never thought she'd be the one left wondering whether she made the wrong choice. But that's exactly what happens when a man truly pulls back. Your silence doesn't just create distance. It creates clarity, not for you, but for her. She begins to see the value of what she walked away from, the kindness you gave, the stability you offered, the presence she had taken for granted. It all becomes sharply visible once it's gone. She sees how rare consistency is. She sees how difficult it is to find someone who cared the way you did. She sees how differently you treated her compared to others. And with that realization comes regret, not necessarily because she wants the relationship back right away, but because she finally understands what was lost. She also starts seeing her own patterns more clearly. The impulsiveness, the emotional reactions, the need for validation. Your silence exposes these things in a way your presence never could. When we lose someone's attention, we are forced to look at ourselves more honestly. The same thing happens to her. She begins to understand the role she played. She can no longer blame everything on you. She can no longer assume she was right simply because she felt it at the time. Your silence removes the noise, and what's left is truth. And that truth can be uncomfortable. She may not voice it. She may not reach out. She may not admit it even to her closest friends. But inside, she knows something important. She didn't expect to feel this way, and she didn't expect to question her own decisions. Yet, here she is. And the longer your silence continues, the more those doubts settle in. Ending line. In the quiet you created, she begins to see clearly, sometimes for the first time, what she lost and why it matters. There comes a point where your silence stops being about distance and starts becoming a mirror, one that reflects her own behavior back at her with undeniable clarity. When a man finally steps back, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but out of genuine self-respect, something profound happens in her mind. She begins to see the consequences of the choices she made, not in theory, but in reality, and that reality hits harder than any argument, any explanation, or any attempt to win her back ever could. She begins to understand that silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication. It tells her that you're no longer waiting for her to decide how she feels. It shows her that you're not sitting by the phone hoping for a glimpse of validation. It proves to her that you have accepted the situation and moved forward with your life. And the weight of that realization grows heavier the longer the silence continues. Suddenly, the man she thought would always be available no longer is. The emotional safety net she assumed she could fall back on has disappeared. And that creates a type of discomfort she can't easily shake. She starts feeling the imbalance shift before. She was the one in control, pacing everything, deciding when to respond, when to pull back, when to show interest. But your silence flips that dynamic in a way she never expected. It changes the narrative from he's trying to hold on to he's slipping away. And that's when her mind starts racing. She thinks about the last conversations, replaying your tone, your words, your reactions. She notices details she missed before because she wasn't really paying attention. She analyzes what led to the distance and wonders if she pushed too hard, demanded too much, or allowed her ego to speak louder than her heart. She sees moments where you tried to connect and where she shrugged it off. She sees the effort she once dismissed as normal or expected, and now she understands it was actually rare. And there's another layer most men don't realize. Your silence doesn't just make her think about you, it makes her compare you with everyone else around her. She starts noticing how other men treat her, how inconsistent they are, how easily they get distracted, how quickly they switch moods, how few of them actually understand her. And then she remembers that you cared, you listened, you gave stability, you showed up, and now you're not there anymore. It's in moments like these that her regret deepens, not because she wants to admit she lost something important, but because she genuinely feels the absence of someone who brought a sense of calm and security into her life. She realizes that the silence she once found attractive or mysterious is now coming from you, and that changes everything. This is also when she realizes something else. You were not waiting for her to change, you were changing yourself. You were healing, you were evolving into a stronger, more grounded version of the man she once knew. And that transformation is what truly shakes her, because she sees now that you are no longer emotionally dependent on her presence. You are no longer hoping or wondering or chasing. And that independence is what pulls her attention harder than anything else. Your silence becomes a message, one that says, I respect myself enough to step away. And that message sinks into her in a way words never could. Ending line. She finally feels the full weight of what she lost when your silence proves you no longer need her. There comes a moment in every man's journey where silence stops being a reaction and becomes a declaration. Not a declaration of war, not a declaration of bitterness, but a declaration of growth. When you reach that point, when your silence comes from strength, not from fear, that is when everything changes in her mind, because she can feel the difference. Women can always feel the difference between a man who is quiet because he's hurting and a man who is quiet because he's evolving. And the moment your silence becomes your strength, it becomes the wake-up call she never expected. She starts noticing things she didn't see before. Your energy shifts. You're not lurking in her shadow, not watching what she posts, not reaching out, not reacting. Your attention, the same attention she once took for granted, is no longer directed at her. And that is something she feels deeply, even if she never admits it. Because when a man truly detaches, women sense it. It's an invisible change in the air, a shift in the dynamic she once controlled. She feels that you're no longer tethered to her emotions, no longer responding to her patterns, no longer influenced by her decisions. And that independence hits harder than any goodbye. The silence that once might have seemed passive now holds weight. It carries purpose. You're building yourself. You're improving your life. You're leveling up in ways she didn't anticipate. While she once believed you'd be waiting in the same place emotionally, mentally, or physically, she now realizes you're not the same man she left behind. And that understanding stirs something inside her, something uncomfortable. Because while she's replaying the past, you're preparing for the future. While she's wondering what you're thinking, you're busy becoming someone even better. And that imbalance shifts the emotional gravity back in your direction. She starts noticing the absence of the version of you she once knew. The one who was always available, always trying, always caring deeply. That man is gone. Not because you stop caring, but because you evolve past the point of needing her validation. Your silence becomes the proof that your life doesn't revolve around her anymore. It becomes the evidence of your self-respect. And even if she doesn't say a word, she feels that loss heavily. She wonders what you're doing, who you're becoming, who you might be talking to, and whether the new version of you even remembers the old version of her. This is where regret grows inside her. Not dramatic regret, not external regret, internal regret. The kind she thinks about at night, the kind she hides from friends, the kind she tries to bury under distractions, but can never fully escape, because your silence forces her to sit with the truth. It shows her who you are becoming without her. It shows her what she walked away from, and it shows her that you are no longer emotionally waiting at the door she closed. Your silence becomes the reminder that she underestimated you. She thought you would chase, react, or cling. Instead, you withdrew and rebuilt. You chose self-worth over desperation. And in doing so, you became the version of yourself she always hoped you'd become. But at a time when she no longer has access to you. That's when the gravity flips entirely. She begins to miss you. Not because she needs attention, but because she sees your true value. She sees your growth. She sees your calm. She sees your strength. And she realizes that the man she once thought she could return to without hesitation has become someone she now feels unsure she even deserves. Ending line. Your silence becomes the turning point where she finally understands you were the one she shouldn't have lost.